live here with Landon Thompson, first guest on the Split the Difference podcast. I've been super excited for this.
Me too, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah,
I'm an avid listener.
I know you are. I appreciate it. In fact, the picture that you took with my T-shirt on got a lot of a lot of likes on it.
The main reason I wanted to do that was to show up everybody else who was going to do it. I mean, that was really the only reason.
Of course, and you did.
Because everyone would look and be like, "Oh,
he did it."
I didn't climb a mountain and
right. Right. I thought that I was a fan of Split the Difference, but turns out that I'm not.
You're not.
Because Landon blew me out of the water. But it's been a ton of fun having this podcast and putting it together. And one of the big things that I wanted to do, obviously, was start having people on. And I was like, who's the most interesting person that I know? And it's got to be Landon.
And he wasn't available. So you said,
Landon's next
Landon
best. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was like, hey, if I can sit down and have a glass of bourbon, talk, have a good time. That sounds like a
fan.
Yeah, I know you are. Well, we got a little bit of Bullet. That's normally my go-to. Yeah. If that's all right. And we can go ahead and if you want to go ahead and pour up,
Thank
you
very
can
much, sir.
as we get started. Yeah, cool. So I think goal of these podcasts is basically going to be to just talk, have a conversation, enjoy one another, have a good drink, have some good storytelling if we need to or if we want to, and just kind of see where the conversation takes us. Does that sound like a plan?
I'm here for it.
Cool. Awesome. So for people that don't know who you are, who is Landon Thompson?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Been trying to figure that out myself. Yeah, so I am from Nashville, Tennessee. Me and my wife are. We moved to Columbia, South Carolina in 2009. We are photographers, so pretty much anything creative is kind of what we do. Yeah. We've been self-employed for 15 years now. So
that's a long time.
Yeah. I mean, if you're our age.
Yeah. That's fair.
I mean, pretty much, like I said, anything creative is kind of what we do. So we do design stuff. We do photography. We do website stuff like that. Recently, we're getting out of the photography stuff, focusing on design. And I've been learning a lot about homesteading, farming.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. We got to get into that later.
Yeah.
Because that's fun.
Building a house outside of the city. Good timing.
Oh, yeah.
Considering no one knows what's going to happen.
Right. We're in some crazy times right now, to say the least. I think everybody's ready for some precedented times.
Didn't even plan for it, but it worked out very well. I can answer more questions. I mean, I haven't written a book.
Yeah, that's okay. We don't need you to write a book. One of the things that I do have questions about, and that I've been very interested in, is what it's been like owning small businesses through this past year. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at 2020, there's no doubt that the statistically and behind the data, the people that have been hit the hardest are small business owners and people that are, basically, especially very service industry oriented, right? And with a lot of like wedding photography, I mean, no, you can't have weddings, Right. What has that been like?
Yeah. So I'm in a lot of what I do is entertainment. So photography, right. I run an incredible wedding band.
That is a fact.
You would know firsthand.
That's right. We use them for our wedding. What's it called?
Station 7 Band.
Best band around.
Yeah, it's great.
And we can link all the stuff, how to get in touch with you for Station 7
Perfect.
Too.
Great. Yeah, so the shutdown hit. We're coming up on a year, right?
Right, yeah.
A year from 15 days to slow the spread. And so that happened. So for anyone in entertainment, that was unprecedented.
Yeah, it was huge.
That's never happened before, to where the government said you can't hold events with more than so many people, depending on where you live.
Right.
And so, yeah, for us and for a lot of other small business owners that I know, some who own restaurants here in Columbia, no one knew what was happening.
Right.
So everything was shut down. we kind of sat and waited to see what was going to happen. So the government came out with, PPP loans and stuff like that, which was helpful. But I'll go ahead and say, from a small business owner, it was also scary to take part in that stuff. Someone like I said, I'm a creative person all the way. So when you're reading all this legal jargon about, you can get this much money if you do these steps, it'll be forgivable, right? But you're worried. It's like, yeah, this would be really helpful. This will help get me through this time. But it won't help if it's just a loan at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, maybe some it will. It'll help get you through, and then you can pay back if you need to. But I know for me and other friends who own businesses, they were hesitant. They almost wanted to kind of hold off and not take it. So it was helpful, but also scary. So I took part in one, and right now I have on my bank, I have a loan, and I hope it'll be forgivable and they'll forgive it.
Right.
But I don't know. So
that's a scary place to be in.
It is, yeah. And so, like I said, it was helpful, but also you're hesitant. You hope it's going to be forgiven. They said it will be if you do the A, B, C, and D, and E, F, G, and the rest of the alphabet.
But can you trust it?
Right.
Know? And I think that's right. And I think that's what.
It was also one administration that gave it, and now there's another one.
Completely different administration. Right. And you never know. I mean, the Congresses have flipped a good bit too since then as well. Mm-hmm. And, when you're walking into January and you're kind of looking at your goals for the year in 2020, you're like, all right, these are the things that I want to do. And then a month later, all of that's out the window. It's like, well, what are we going to do in order to be able to get by? What are the steps that we need to take so that we can pay our bills, Mm-hmm. And I think that at face value, a lot of those PPP loans and the SBA loans and stuff like that are very good and like they were needed. But if they come with a price tag at the end, or if they're not forgivable, what are a lot of these small businesses going to do?
I don't know. And so that would have been helpful, having that a little more clear cut, I think.
Yeah.
And then, and so you get worried, but then you hear about these, universities or other huge businesses that took out multi-millions of dollars. And I'm like, maybe they'll just kind of forget about the rest of us.
Yeah, all the small guys.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
But also
and that may
sometimes
be true.
What happens is they take care of the big guys, and sometimes the small guys
are the ones that get it.
But
yeah,
we'll see what happens. So we had that, which was good and bad. And the cool thing, though, I will say this, and I did hear this from a lot of my friends who own small businesses. But yeah, I feel like you didn't hear about this a lot, or I didn't hear about it. One thing I noticed is a lot of people, their job didn't change. So they got to work from home.
Right.
Everything was the same. And what I saw a ton is those people supporting their local business. And so my wife, she is a painter as well. And we had a lot of people when lockdown happened, and people were realizing this isn't going to be 15 days. This isn't going to be 2 months.
Right. Well, it's like that first week turns into 2 weeks, turns into a month, turns into 2 months. Now we're sitting here a year later, and we're looking around and we're like, is this going to end? Is this this is just the new normal, you know? But you were saying they help a lot of people are helping small business. I felt like I saw a lot of that too.
Yeah, I did. And that was cool. That was really neat, because sure, maybe you're working at home and you have a steady paycheck. But if we're honest, I think all of us are a little nervous.
Oh, 100%.
Well, I mean, no one's safe.
Right.
Even the biggest CEO.
Oh, absolutely not.
But watching people say, you know what? I'm okay. I'm working from home. I have a paycheck. I want to buy a painting, or I want to do this. And I saw that a ton. And that was really cool. Sadly, some of that stuff doesn't get, reported.
Right.
But I think across the board, more than the loan from the government, it was, obviously, it wasn't that much. Even if you took the loan to the fullest amount, it would only cover you for 2 or 3 months.
Max.
It's not much at all.
Yeah.
Kind of like the checks, the stimulus checks everybody got.
Right. Well, it's hilarious because I was thinking about this and talked about this the other day too. But another one of my buddies is a small business owner as well, and I was talking to him about taking out those PPP loans. And I think the max, and I can get fact checked on this, but the max I believe was $14,000 that you could get from it, depending on $14,000 per small business.
Oh, it all depends
on the size of your business.
Your monthly expenses.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I think that the idea though behind it was that the PPP loans were really only supposed to last, help get businesses through for 2 months, right? And then the government's like, we're going to send out a stimulus check, and it's going to be $1,200 a person. Mm-hmm. And for those people that really needed it, that $1,200 went a pretty long ways, I mean, especially if you've got a household with 2 kids and, 2 working adults. I mean, you're talking about, total getting $3,600 out of nowhere. I mean, that would be incredible help. But it's a lot like what you're saying. Like the vast majority of the people that I know are doing the exact same job. They're just working at home, right? Mm-hmm. And like for me, like obviously podcasting getting paying the bills for me. So like I still work full time, mm-hmm. right? I'd love for podcasting to pay my bills, but not quite there yet. But I mean, my job, I do the exact same thing, except now I sit on my couch in my gym shorts, and if anything, my expenses have dramatically decreased because for a very long time, I couldn't go to a restaurant. I couldn't go to a bar. I couldn't go on vacations or travel, right? I couldn't go out and see people. It's like, what are you going to spend your money on? Well, you're not. And I think you're starting to see like a whole lot of the financial data that has come out about like everyday American spending and the amount of credit that they have is like actually through 2020, the people that have been slammed the hardest are very, very low wage workers and small business owners, but everybody else is doing great. Like they're paying down their debt, they're paying off their credit cards, they're saving more money than they have in a very, very long time. And it's all because for the most part, like they got the stimulus checks, but they didn't need it, you know? And so it's like, well, all right, with this next round of stimulus that's coming up, why don't you just pare down the amount of people that actually get it? Like, yeah, it would be nice if I get another $1,400 check from the government, but like my wife and I don't need that, we're going to be fine with that. I would much rather you give it to somebody that would actually need it. And then maybe that's not a popular opinion, right? Most people would be like, give me mine, right?
Yeah, I think it's, along those same lines. If you get it, at least you know where it's going.
Right.
And you would hope, by me sacrificing this, it's going to go to the right person. Well, maybe it will. Maybe it won't.
But you never know, right? It's the government handing out money.
Right.
You don't know where that stuff's going.
Honestly, yeah, exactly. Kind of the point I was making before, what got small businesses through was their neighbor who knows them. That's who got every small business through this. People who decided, you know what, I want to give my money and help support small local business. The government definitely didn't bail anybody out. Right.
Which is amazing because that's what the politicians are all claiming right now.
Oh.
If it hadn't been for the COVID stimulus, people would never made it through.
I personally, just logically, with how much money they would give you, there's no way they could.
Right.
Anybody could have made it at all. In the same way, what would help small businesses is for everyone to get a stimulus check if you don't need it. Take that and support a small business.
Right.
And
I think in theory, that's what a lot of
honestly,
politicians would like.
I would trust, from in my experience, I would trust the American people to do that a little bit more than I would the government to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% there with you. 100%.
That's what I've seen.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes back to I think one of the, especially you see this a lot from especially the right side of the aisle, like the Republicans. One of the big things that they always push is that it's not the government's role and responsibility to be able to maintain the charity to its people. It's the people within America that have the responsibility of acting charitably towards their other fellow Americans, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that this COVID pandemic in a lot of ways really kind of showed the importance of that, like being able to hear people calling up like, you know what? I don't necessarily need a painting right now, but like I know that Jordan sells paintings, and I know that right now a lot of their income may not be coming in. I'm gonna buy a painting,
right?
You know, because I care for them. I care for the Thompsons. You know?
And people did that,
right?
So just talking about small business, you know, someone like me who is entrepreneurial,
right?
I always have a couple of businesses in my back pocket and I'll kind of like test the waters and see how that's going. What's crazy, and I've seen this too, is that you really don't. You have to, if you're somebody who likes to start businesses, you have to kind of change your whole plan, because what you used to be able to depend on, the simple fact that people could go out and buy a meal at a restaurant.
Can't do it anymore.
You can't depend on that anymore. And so I had friends who had 5, 10, 15-year plans, and they have to rethink it. You know, so even for me, in starting, you know, this farming, organic gardening journey, you know, at first, you know, my goal was to grow high quality produce and sell to high-end restaurants. That's what I wanted to do. Well, now maybe you can do that.
Right.
You know, what happens if there's another wave? What happens if this happens again in 10 years? God forbid that does. You know?
Yeah.
So you have to think, what can I do with my business that if something like this were to happen, I can still make money?
Yeah.
What could I do, you know, despite any government sanction, could I still make money? And what I've seen a lot is so funny. Years ago when I was doing research and all this, you know, gardening and it came from a lot of different places. The main one, and this is, I mean, it's a long story. I'll jump ahead, is seeing all the horrible farming practices across America.
Oh, there's some pretty bad ones.
Your large scale macro crop.
Right.
It's just not healthy for the environment.
Oh no, it's awful for the environment. It's awful for your food.
Yeah,
it's all the way around.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's this wave of people trying to do something different. There's this documentary that was in theaters. I think it's called The Little Big Farm. You can look that up.
Yeah, we for anybody wondering who Landon's talking to, that is Matthew. That's my brother Matthew over there. He is going to be our aficionado sitting behind the camera. So big thanks to him also for his service right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay,
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah.
Little Big Farm is the name of it. Okay, cool.
Go on Amazon, wherever it is. Pay the $5, rent it, watch it. Cool story.
The Biggest Little Farm.
The Biggest Little Farm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's it.
I really recommend that. The Biggest Little Farm.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
Find it online. It's going to change your life. I feel confident saying that.
Yeah.
Maybe a little change. But the concept, you know, what can we do to provide food that's sustainable? That is a lot harder than you might think. If you go
Why is that?
All right, because our concept of money and food is off. Very similar to, I have a buddy who owns a home building company, and he builds really high quality homes. Now, unfortunately, he loses bids all the time because there's a market for really low quality homes that just pop up quick. And so people lose that frame of reference.
Right.
Food is the same way. You go to McDonald's, pay $2 for a burger or something. I dare you to make that burger for $2.
Oh, right. Well, there's no way you can.
There's no way you can. Now, you know, maybe you can say, yeah, it's because I'm not selling millions a day. If I went and bought, you know, 1 million pounds of beef, maybe you get it down. Maybe. I'm not really sure though.
Well, it wouldn't be quality, right? I mean, that's how McDonald's has made all their money, right? I mean, you're able to have these gigantic factory farms, and it's all economies of scale, right? I mean, when you've got a cattle ranch with, you know, a million steer on it, you know, running across, you know, Middle Eastern America or, you know, down in Brazil, and you're importing all that beef in. It's much, much cheaper. And, you know, it's not going to be good quality at all, but you're not worried about quality, right? But don't you think there's an argument to be made that like that cheap food is good as well, like that you need both, where you have your sustainable farms that are smaller, that are much higher quality in the produce and the food that you're getting, but at the same time, like sometimes it's nice to be able to go and spend $2 and get a McChicken.
I think as Americans we have to have cheap food, or everyone will starve to death. Now that is because how Americans choose to live.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I also know, to loop this around real quick, most of the people that die of COVID have comorbidities.
Yep.
We're not a healthy nation.
At all.
And I think that does link to the fact of us having this value of food that isn't really there. A lot of what we do really doesn't make sense. If you think about it, how is it possible that at any second of the day, there is enough food at every second of the day to feed every single person in your city?
Oh, yeah, easily.
That's kind of...
Right, well, there's enough food.
That's great, but it's also kind of nuts just to think about it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I also think about it this way. You can go into any of the 5 or 6 home improvement stores that are in your city, and they're full of wood all the time.
Right.
For me, when I look at that, it's like, I don't know how this is sustainable.
Yeah.
And people would say, well, it's not. You know,
well, of course it's not. Right.
We're taking down our forest, you know, and to make all this happen. So part of what I want to do, and I feel like I've gone on a couple rabbit trails.
No, that's all right. That's what we're here for.
Is to retrain people. What is high quality food? Where does your food come from? And what should you focus on when you're eating or growing your food? So years ago, as I was getting into all this, I followed this guy. He's on YouTube. He's called The Urban Farmer, I think was his name. And so his whole thing, Curtis Stone, if you want to look him up, that's his name, he was in a city downtown, and he was a market gardener, which means you grew for markets, farmers markets. And he did this for years. He took a quarter of an acre. His thing was like, you can make $100,000 off a quarter of an acre. And he showed you how to do it. And that was his whole thing. and like, he wrote books on it and everything. And that's how he made money. And right now, he bought several acres out in Canada. He's from Canada. He didn't move there. Several acres, and he's doing a homestead, and he's trying to grow his own food. It's
That's
like,
awesome.
It's, but that goes back to what I'm saying about people who own businesses. You have to rethink how you're doing things.
Right. You have to change everything up.
Right. And you know, this guy who for years sold to restaurants, that was his thing. Grow high quality food, sell it to restaurants, sell it to farmers markets, sell it to people who value it. And a lot of that was gone.
Yeah.
Especially the restaurant business.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And so he had to rethink, all right, if things go really, really bad, could I even grow enough food for my family, you know, or my neighbors? And so it's a cool journey. He and other families chipped in like $5,000 each. They had $25,000, and they started this farm that would ultimately feed the 5 families. And it was kind of an experiment, but also they were all slightly freaked out.
Yeah.
This was earlier on during lockdown.
Oh, okay. So this was last year.
This was last year.
Okay.
He did that. And then that was multiple families, you know, outside of the city. And then he bought his own property way outside of the city. He's doing this whole homestead thing.
That's so cool. Well, and there's been a huge push into the homestead, like that whole homestead kind of community, like that lifestyle, the idea of like getting out of this urban center and moving out and having your own land and your own house. Because I mean, for the past 100 years or so, there's been a nonstop push towards urbanization. I mean, everybody's flocking into cities. And the land, the housing is incredibly expensive. The food is expensive. And I really do think that it's a bit of a sobering thought to sit down and say, all right, well, if tomorrow the grocery store didn't have food, what would I do?
Well, yeah.
And I think that is that's sobering, right? That's sobering to me sitting here because I don't have a garden. Like, I don't have enough land for a garden, like, what am I going to do? I don't even know how to grow food. And the funny thing is my day job, I work in farm credit. So all day long, I am looking at reports and analysis and, market segments of farmers, rural homeowners as well. And we have seen a gigantic explosion in the amount of people moving out of cities and wanting to get land in rural areas. I mean, the rural home loan programs for all the associations that I work with are all going through the roof right now. And it's from people moving out of New York and California and large cities in Florida or Atlanta. And they're like, you know what? Like, I can work from home and I don't have to be in a city because I don't have to go into the office anymore. So I want to buy land. I want to be able to walk outside and see grass. If I want to, I want to be able to grow my own food, learn how to do it. I mean, YouTube has a wealth of information, you can learn how to do it. And create a way to where you are living your own sustainable lifestyle, and that's beneficial to your family. And then if something, God forbid, something does happen, you're fine. You can provide for yourself. And it's funny how we're like just now realizing all of this when, like, really literally just 100 years ago, they'd be laughing at us like, what? Of course.
Yeah. My granddad would, I think most of our grandparents, if I had to guess, have their own garden.
Right.
Because most of their parents, that was a big chunk of their family's food came from that garden.
Oh yeah.
And
well, especially if you grew up in the South. Like our mother was the first generation of our family to not grow up on a farm. Like our whole family, they were all farmers, right? They all grew up, walking outside and looking at the fields that provided them the majority of their food.
Isn't that a crazy thought, though? You talk to someone from 100 years ago, and let's just say, hypothetically, we ran out of food. And they're like, oh, man, so many people died. And they're like, why? Well, we ran out of food. Like, why didn't you grow it? No one knew how to grow it.
Nobody knew how to grow
No one knew
any
how to
food.
grow their own food.
I mean, well, it's so funny that you say that because my wife and I put together the dinkiest little garden you've ever seen in your life out on our 1/10 of an acre of land and outside here living in downtown Columbia. And I was so excited about it because like our mother always had a little garden growing up with tomatoes and squash and all kinds of fun stuff. And I remember being like, I'm going to get out there and grow my own tomatoes. I'm going to grow some jalapenos. I'm going to get some bell peppers. It's going to be good. And we got to the end of the summer, and I was like, I didn't do any of this right. Like, it looked terrible, and I didn't get any good vegetables out of it. And I was like, oh, man, I'd be in for a rude awakening if I had to start growing my own food.
Right? Well, then you do it. And then if you're honest, so you do all that work. You get your first harvest. Maybe it's a small basket full of stuff. And then maybe the rest of the season, maybe you get 5 more baskets. And you're like, man, that was great. I spent probably 4 times as much on this garden as I did, buying these
buying
at
all
the grocery store.
Yeah.
Then again, though, it goes back to my statement that the breakdown doesn't make sense here. That if I grow something, even if I do it on a large scale, let's say I plant 15 tomato plants, so I'm getting it to a higher ratio for my time involved, and and this is the issue now, if I can't sell that tomato for cheaper than I would buy it at the grocery store, well, then somewhere along the chain, wherever that tomato's grown, either it's a horrible quality of a tomato, it was just grown terribly, or someone's making very little money to grow that. Somewhere in Mexico or somewhere in South America, somebody's getting ripped off in the process.
Right.
Because you can't pay someone well to grow high quality food and then get it for as cheap as we can get it right now.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the things, going back to one of the things that you were saying earlier about like the health of our food and the health of our country, one of the things that I think has been like mind-blowing to me is the lack of education and the lack of pushing into health as being a primary concern during this pandemic. And like, why has there not been more of a focus around the food that we're eating, right? The food that we're getting from our grocery store. Like if you're going up to Walmart and you were buying a bag of chicken for $8 and it's going to feed you for a week and a half, at some point you've got to sit down and think like, is the food that I'm putting into my body good for me? And then when you look at like the number of people that are dying as a result of COVID because they have comorbidities like heart disease or diabetes or, you know, a plethora of other things like obesity, all of these things are so closely tied into the food that we're consuming every single day. But there's been no talk about that. Like when you hear the government, people in government talking, or I mean, even, you know, at any like CNN hosts or on major news networks, you don't hear a lot of people being like, well, why is health not a concern, right? Like, why is it not okay to tell Americans, like, you guys are way overweight. You guys eat like crap. Like, why don't you guys get a little bit healthier, and it would probably protect you a lot more, you know?
Man, I think about that a lot. Yeah, because the truth is, if you're a healthy person, statistically, you're immune. It's not going to be an issue. Maybe you'll be down for a couple days.
Right.
But you're going to kick it like you kick probably a lot of sicknesses that all of us get probably once a year because your body's healthy and it's going to fight it off.
Right.
And I think, you know, we were not prepared as a nation for a disease like this.
Not even close.
But in more ways than one, we're also not prepared on a health level for something like this. I think if anything, all the issues COVID has brought to light, all the new issues that COVID has given us. One, I agree that nobody's talking about is that we are, because of our health, Americans can get wiped out pretty easily because we don't take care of ourselves. Now that's not shame on somebody at all. I don't blame a single person for not being healthy because it's hard to get access sometimes to healthy food.
Right.
And truth be told, it's just not out there. There is so much we could do to teach people, to offer people. But I mean, and it goes, you know, down a whole nother rabbit hole of why is so much crappy food available.
Right. Well, so like, how does it change? Right. How does this start to shift? How do people start consuming and having better access to more healthy food? Is the answer everybody go out and buy a parcel of land and homestead?
Well, that's not possible.
Right.
For most people. I go back to that idea that somebody's getting ripped off somewhere. And either the person who's picking those tomatoes is getting ripped off really, really bad. Or you're getting ripped off for just the type of food that you eat. Somebody's getting ripped off, and at the same time, somebody's making a lot of money.
Yeah, well, there's always, you can follow the money, and you can always find somebody that's raking it in.
Right. I believe it would be, to answer your question, how do you fix the issue? I think a lot of the food that we see in the grocery store, a lot of those ingredients honestly shouldn't be allowed to be in there, right? Fruit Loops shouldn't be called a breakfast food.
How dare you say that? I love some sugary breakfast cereal. Oh, man, I love it. Some Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Fruit Loops should be called what it is, candy.
No way. Yeah. That is a part of a balanced breakfast, Landon. Don't you understand?
And that's what we're all taught.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I thought growing up we would eat Pop-Tarts and cereal for breakfast.
Oh yeah, me too.
Just shoveling sugar in.
I mean, honestly, our diet is made up of wheat and sugar. That's most of what we eat.
Yeah.
I mean, you could talk for hours about how do you fix the issue. There are people trying to fix it, bringing farmers to low-income neighborhoods and selling directly to them. I've seen that firsthand, and that's helpful. But there are so much larger people at play. The companies that make the food, they're lobbyists that allow them to put the ingredients.
Oh yeah.
It's a whole mess.
Oh, it is. Well, it's like one of my favorite stories ever is Cisco, or Crisco, I think is the name of it. Crisco, yeah, it basically is a lard. The formula for it, and Matthew, you can check me on this, but the formula for it, nobody really knows exactly what's in it, and it can't be changed because they filed a very, very specific patent over 100 years ago, and the federal government can't do anything about it. Like Crisco can just continue to shovel whatever, they could have rat poison in there and nobody would know it, and there's no way to be able to stop them from doing it because they were able to lobby well enough, long ago enough to where they can just do whatever they want with it. It's unbelievable that kind of stuff goes on, but you never know what's in your food, and at the end of the day, you're still gonna eat it and you're still gonna drink it, especially if you don't know people, if you have a lack of education in it, there's just no way you're ever going to know to not eat a McDonald's burger or drink a Mountain Dew, even though, it is literally putting poison into your body in a lot of ways.
It's bad. And I think COVID has exposed that. And once again, what's sad is a lot of the people who have access to healthy food, they have money.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I count myself as one of those people where it's if it was of that much importance to Carson and I, we could absolutely go out and buy, whole food that is grown from a locally sourced farm. But at the end of the day, it just costs a lot more money. And it's hilarious how when Carson and I sit down and we're writing out a budget, food is what we're trying to reduce our expenses on as much as possible. And it's well, how can we eat cheaper? What do we need to do in order to eat cheaper, as opposed to what do we need to be doing in order to eat healthier and have food that's better for our bodies?
So for people who they've been blessed enough to have a stable job, some of it, because let's be honest, there are a lot of fat, wealthy people.
That is a fact.
And some of it is reprioritizing your budget. I had a buddy who said, we pay a lot of money in food, but the way I look at it is I'm either going to pay for it now or I'm going to pay for it in hospital bills in 20 years.
That's fair.
Or pay for it in pharmaceuticals that I have to take to keep my cholesterol down, or pay for this crazy diabetes medicine,
Yeah.
And, but we don't. But because we have in our head, we have that, man, God, I could have only spent $5 on this meal at McDonald's. We kind of feel bad about
it.
But so for those of us who are lucky enough to be able to reallocate funds to go buy some healthy stuff, either and support restaurants who make those decisions, because there are Small Sugar here in Columbia, South Carolina. And there's several of them, but that's one. She does a great job. You can go in there and she has a whole list of all the local people she supports.
Yeah.
Buys their produce, stuff that they grow, whatever it is. You're going to spend a lot more there than if you let's poop on McDonald's the whole time. Then if you get
they're the poster child for American obesity, right?
Yeah. There's a lot. You're going to spend more there. But putting your money there is also supporting people who are trying to make those decisions. And she also pays every one of her workers a living wage. If you haven't been there, go support Small Sugar.
Yeah. But I think that in a lot of ways, you're starting to see businesses shift more towards that, very simply because there are people that want to support that. And I do think that that's a generational mindset shift where you're starting to see the millennial generation look at climate change, for example, or look at sustainability. And they're like, all right, well, I would rather spend my money on something that's much more suitable and beneficial for the environment, as opposed to, where in maybe the baby boomer generation or the silent generation before them, where they were like, I would rather not spend my money on something that's going to be benefiting the climate, and I would rather spend that money somewhere else. And so hopefully, as the mindset and as, different things start to shift with just changing demographics, that will slowly but surely start to change, because you're starting to see a lot more like, clean eating and, locally sourced grocery stores and restaurants and businesses pop up here and there. Hopefully they stick around. I think that they will. And maybe that becomes more popular.
Yeah. People will have to make the decision, just like they did to support local business. I'm going to make the decision to spend more money on food, either for myself to keep me and my family healthy, or at a restaurant who they are going above and beyond to provide high quality food. Because I'll tell you, if you own a restaurant, they make it pretty easy for you as far as like how to get low quality food.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not easy to put a meal on a plate and say, God, I know everybody wants to pay $5 for that, but they got to pay 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I have $5 in this meal because I decided to go buy local bread, to go buy local asparagus or tomatoes or whatever,
Right.
Making up a sandwich, but because if you start a restaurant, the companies, I mean, they make it easy. I mean, they give you a book. We've all seen those giant semi trucks, and I forget the name of it, but it's where it's got food on it, and they're going to deliver to all these restaurants.
Right.
And once again, I mean, there's so many middlemen. Somebody's getting ripped off. At the end of the day, it's really you because you're not eating high quality stuff.
Yeah.
And so if you find a restaurant or a cafe somewhere and they've gone through the trouble to find those local farmers, support them because that wasn't given to them.
Right. They had to figure that out on their own.
Yeah. They don't have, some farmers union who are just pumping all this stuff out.
Right.
They went and they asked around, and they found those people and they said, what are you growing? And they made a list. I mean, they put a lot of work into that. So yeah, if you see that, go support them.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I think and hopefully I do think that's where demographics hopefully start to shift. But so you decided, when did y'all end up buying your land? It was like a year and a half ago now, somewhere in there. So you're telling me
2019.
Okay. So I guess that would have been before the pandemic and everything hit. But I guess now,
summer of 2019?
Okay, cool. So now though, I'm sure that you're looking at this and being like, maybe I need to build a bunker, right? With everything that has happened over 2020, and a lot happened, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, what's going on with the country right now? Are you looking at your land and being like, thank the Lord right now, because it looks like everything's about to go sideways?
I mean, you hope it doesn't.
Of
but
course.
You also want to prepare. I mean, if anyone tries to go to their local gun store, they will see a depletion of ammo and firearms.
There's nothing there.
Because most people are worried about it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And yeah, I've had that thought. I mean, not bunker per se, but of like, all right, power grid fails. How do I keep food cold? I'll go old school, buried in the ground. And there's a term for that.
Well, it's crazy because I really do think that people, for the first time in a very long time, are starting to look around and like kind of be like, this is looking like it's not going in a good direction. And I was actually talking about it on the podcast the other day, but NBC came out with a poll that was asking voters if they felt like the country was going in the right direction, Republicans and Democrats. Republicans and Democrats jointly both said over 70% of the people thought the country was going in the wrong direction. And that's scary, and I really do think that stuff like that, like the Capitol Hill riots that ended up happening, they shows how fragile democracy actually is. Like when you see the place where democracy is taking place overrun by people with guns, by people with wearing all kinds of crazy crap. Like, I mean, they were wearing all kinds of stuff and carrying flags of the current sitting president. It's kind of scary. You're looking at that and you're like, maybe we don't have it all together like we thought we did. Like, this is scary. Or at least I've had those thoughts.
Oh, yeah. 70% is a high number.
Yeah.
But you look at all the protests that have happened throughout the whole year, and you're like, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody's happy. The funny thing is, I looked at that riot different because, normally when stuff goes down, as a small business owner, there have been a lot of small businesses that have been ransacked. So I was like, finally, go destroy some government building.
That's so funny. It's so true, though. I feel like every single time that you see any videos of like all the rioting and the protesting and the looting, they're like throwing bricks through small business owners' windows, and it's like, you're killing the communities that you live in.
Like, I get it. I understand why you're bad enough to do that. But when the riots happened, there was a lot of like people, it was like sacred ground. They broke through the Capitol. And our senators, they were hunkering down. I was like, I wish that never happened. It was horrible. Every person who did that should go to prison.
Absolutely, right.
But I was like, you know what?
Kind of funny as them for a change.
Every time the country was mad, they went to the White House,
things would be a little different.
I think it would.
Yeah.
So I was like, I wish it would never happen. If it did, I wish it always happened there to those people.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I think those are the people who are fueling a lot of the stuff that's going on in one way or another.
Oh, 100%.
But so yeah, that was horrible and it was crazy. But I just had a totally different outlook on it because
that
was
is
like,
so.
good.
I've not heard
I'm glad
that one
those
yet.
people are hunkered down, as opposed to people all throughout the city who are trying to figure this out.
Right. Absolutely.
It's probably not a good outlook, but
well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's funny because like
I had zero sympathy seeing those people hunkered down. Sorry, that's probably bad.
Well, I mean,
but
when it comes down to it, man, like those are the people that have to enact legislation in order for stuff to change. Right. And I think that it is interesting how immediately it became so much more about like, we have to blame Trump for this. And like, don't get me wrong, Trump absolutely had a huge part to play in it. I mean, he was standing there in front of that crowd not long before telling them to march down to Pennsylvania Avenue,
right.
But he wasn't the only player, right? You have to look at those politicians that have worked so hard to instigate and inflame the country. I mean, just attacking both sides, just screaming and yelling at each other and attacking each other as much as possible. And, when it comes down to it, it was kind of predictable. Like, seeing that kind of anger and fury bubble over eventually, and, I mean, all throughout 2020. I mean, starting with the George Floyd protests. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Black Lives Matter protests, I think that you can debate all you want about Black Lives Matter as an organization, right? Because as an organization, they're tough to support with some of their leadership.
Right.
But for the cause of Black Lives Matter, they were justifiably so out there protesting.
Yeah.
Which, like, looking at what happened this past summer, and it's amazing for me to think about that, like, that was like 7 or 8 months ago that George Floyd was killed. But, I mean, you're right, the place that they should have really been protesting the most was right up there in Washington, D.C. That's where the protesting needs to be taking place. But, and there were some protests in D.C., but...
There were. Not everybody can get up there. But I wish it was possible. I do. I wish, that city block that was held captive for however many months up in Seattle or something.
Right.
I wish that was done in D.C. I wish the people who run our country had to experience that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a train of thought.
Well, I think that it's difficult because on one hand you are, I feel like the country is boiling up and getting to a place where they're like something has to change. But I think because of the way a lot of the institutions in America are structured, it's very difficult to see like what needs to change, when it needs to change, and what it needs to change to, And so like if you're trying to solve a problem like the amount of racism in America right now and the incredible rise of white supremacy, you can look to your politicians and say, listen, man, we need for men and women, we need for y'all to change this. But like, what can they do? Like you can march and you can protest, but at the end of the day, it's going to have to be a shift in culture, and politics is downstream from culture. There's going to have to be, until I think the American constituents stop voting in people that are pushing legislation that's horrendous, there's not going to be a change.
I agree. And, talking about the Capitol riot, I agree. There is a whole lot Trump could have done and should have done to make sure that didn't happen.
Right.
I listened to it multiple times. At one point, he did say, we're going to go peacefully down. But it's like,
he was
if you're in charge of there,
yeah.
I mean, if you were there, okay, let's say if I was there, I would have said point blank, we're going to go down to the Capitol.
That was spot on. You got to say tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Down my favorite street, most favorite street in Washington.
It's been more beautiful since I've gotten there.
I would have said, and not a single person is going to go past those barriers. We are not going to mess anything up. I mean, I would have been so clear. No one is to do that, and he wasn't. So at that, even if at best, was careless.
Right. At the very
best, was careless. At the worst, definitely incited it.
Right.
But I think if we're talking about just America and the craziness that we're in right now, you have to. I've been thinking about this a lot. How do we fix it? And
well, if you know, tell me now.
Oh,
tell our listeners now. We need to know.
I think this is the craziest it's ever been because, as far as I know, I don't think us as a society has gone through something like this. When all of us are also on social media, and there's all this cancel culture, and those people who, when you riot and you break stuff, it's because you think this is the only way I'm gonna let somebody know how upset I am. I have to do this, and you normally have evidence of a society or something that is bringing you down, right? So the George Floyd video,
right?
George Floyd. We've seen a ton of those.
Yeah, people are tired of seeing them.
Tired of seeing them. That was really heartbreaking because it lasted so long. And there was a lot of chaos because of that, and I think as much as the media likes to blame Trump, and he deserves a lot of it, by demonizing everybody on the right.
Right.
By doing things like banning Trump from Twitter, shutting down Parler, all that stuff, you're making these people think they don't have a voice, that you are subsequently becoming the bad guy that they think they have to defeat.
Right.
And, you said this in one of your podcasts, is that the mainstream media, a lot of them point out every negative thing about Trump so much, even the positive things, either they just won't mention it or they'll twist it to something negative.
Right.
That when Trump does something bad, you've cried wolf too many times. We don't even know. Every day he is Satan. So
right. It's all Orange Man bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've seen that shift in the media since Biden was elected.
Right.
I mean, you've seen. There's no question about whether or not the media is left leaning. I mean, of course they are, but you've seen an incredible shift in the way that the media has dealt with and communicated with and covered Biden. I mean, I literally just talked about. I think it was on Wednesday in my podcast. The CNN even took down the Chevron for the COVID death numbers.
I heard you say that.
And it's like, wow, like that's. Come on, like that's just point blank.
So the problem is you have Trump saying the fake media,
right?
And everyone's like, "Yeah, I agree."
Honestly, I mean, he's not wrong.
And he's not wrong. And so when he says, and so everyone has been on board. No, I can see it. We all see it. They hate Trump, and you know, someone said this months ago, and it's so true. They're activists. They're not journalists, right?
Yeah.
So you see this, and you start to get this idea. Okay, there is a larger thing that's out there that is supposed to be doing something, but they're not because of their own interest. So when Trump starts saying voter fraud,
yeah,
well, you know what? I might believe you because you've been telling me about how the whole media is out to get you.
Right.
Maybe this is true too.
Yeah. And then you hear the media say, he's lying, there's no such thing as voter fraud. And it's not even as much, I think, to a lot of Trump voters, it's not even as much that Trump was saying that there was voter fraud. It was more of the fact that the media was saying that there wasn't. That Trump voters were looking at that and they were like, well, they've lied about everything for the past year, 4 years, right?
Yeah, and that there is the real danger in what the media did.
Yeah.
That when, you know, for the past, you know, I mean, since election night, no, people already knew what everyone was going to say because they've been saying something. And so when all this news came out, they didn't know who to believe.
Right. And I think the tough part is the overall you have seen the entirety of the media say there was no voter fraud at all. And we know that that's not true because there's always some. There's going to be some voter fraud, right? And so if you call Trump a liar when Trump says that there was voter fraud, he technically is not wrong, right? Now, obviously, Trump said that he won the vote by millions of votes. He won the election by millions of votes. Not true. Okay, that's fair. You can call that out. You can fact check that all you want. That's not true. Okay, but I think that when you demonize the entirety of the half of the country, and I think that most of the media didn't recognize or didn't want to realize there were still over 70 million people that voted for Donald Trump.
There's a lot.
That's a lot of people in this country. And so, yes, you know, Donald Trump made a lot of missteps, and I believe wholeheartedly that Donald Trump lost this election himself. It was not Joe Biden that came in and ran any kind of incredible campaign, right? Mm-hmm. Like, Joe Biden stayed in Delaware the entire time, like, did not do much, right? And Donald Trump shot himself in the foot in every way that he possibly could have and still barely lost. Like, I mean, literally 250 to 400,000 votes shift, and Donald Trump's like right there neck and neck. Mm-hmm. And so what's amazing to me is that, like, when all the dust had settled, when everything had settled down, it's like you still have half of a country that legitimately did think that Donald Trump was going to lead in a better way. So instead of demonizing that entire group of people, why don't you say, okay, like, obviously there's something about what Trump was saying that was either compelling to you or you just legitimately hated the other side that much, right? And you don't see, the media doesn't seem to be doing that, right? There doesn't seem to be any type of reality.
They're fueling the fire.
Right.
I mean, so imagine, you know, with the Capitol breach, you know, if the media was, hey, you know what? We denounce all of it, however many people it was. Let's say it was 300. Maybe it was more. I don't think it was more than that. A whole lot more.
I mean, it was a couple thousand.
It was a lot of who got in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
I believe that can be fact checked as well.
we denounce all of that. You all broke the law, and you all should go to jail.
Right.
We also want to thank the tens of thousands of people who didn't do that.
Right.
Thank you, other Republicans who were there for the same reason, but didn't go. That
chose not to go through the barrier.
Chose not to go through.
Right.
That's how you bridge the gap there, right?
That's a good point.
But instead, you can find 2,000 idiots anywhere.
Right. Well, that's
anywhere.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that's what one of my favorite. This is, I guess, a little bit off topic, but one of my favorite things that I always heard, especially from a lot of my Republican friends, was, well, all the way down to the bitter end, there was an election fraud. This election is going to be flipped. Donald Trump was able to get over 1,000 affidavits of people talking about how the election was fraudulent. And I'm like, Donald Trump could get 1,000 affidavits of people saying literally anything. Like, he could get 1,000 affidavits of people saying that he's been to Mars and they saw him do it, right? And it's like, come on.
I mean, I'm sure whatever organization it is that try to find Bigfoot, there's probably a couple thousand of those.
Oh, yeah. You can get
those people out there.
All right, say what you want. Bigfoot is real.
Yeah.
Okay? We can go ahead and throw that out there
I mean,
now.
if you said, Landon, if you can find 1,000 affidavits of people who have seen Bigfoot,
I'd sign one right now.
And I'll give you $100,000. You can find 1,000 people to do anything.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah. But the issue is, and what the media is doing is they're furthering that divide.
Yeah. Purposefully so. Right.
Yeah. And I agree. Trump could have done and said a lot more things to where everyone would know he's not a racist.
That's a great example.
Sure, I have friends too who they would say, you can go online and find clips of Trump just saying, that he is against the KKK and all this. It's like, yeah, he also had a lot of opportunities where he could have made that very, very clear.
And he purposefully chose not to.
And he didn't.
And he winked and nodded at the alt-right, right? Like that 2017 in Charlottesville. Come on now.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's a great example. But at the same time, I know I have a lot of friends who are Republicans. I don't know a single one who is a racist.
Yeah.
I know all of those people would, most of them, if I had to guess, if a neighbor of color was in trouble, would put life on the line to go help them.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but that's not the narrative we hear. Mm-hmm. And that's sad.
Yeah. That,
truth be told, the majority of Americans would lay down their life to help somebody else out if their life was in danger. I believe most people would.
I do too.
I mean, it's kind of the reason you started this podcast, right? Because it's like you have these conversations.
Yeah.
And even people who believe two different things normally can have a conversation and it not go sideways, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what we see.
Right. Right. Well, we're fed every day. We're more divided than ever. Right. Things are going down the crapper faster than they have ever before.
Right.
People are more racist than they've ever been. There's more white supremacists than there have ever been. Everything is worse than it's ever been. And it's like I have conversations with people every day, and that's not what I hear. Yes, I hear people that are worried and they're concerned for this current state of America, but like very rarely do I meet people that are openly and actively racist or saying horrible racist things. And it's because the culture in America doesn't accept it, right? And that's not to say that there aren't racist people. Of course there are. Yeah. But I'm okay with the free market of voices deciding racism is horrible and us actively working against it without the entirety of the cancel culture coming after people and attacking people.
And the problem is, once again, it's too much of crying wolf. And so you're using big terms like racism. And most people, though, would say, oh, I'm not a racist.
Right.
No big deal. When there is a lot of stuff that systems in place that are still oppressing black people, and you don't have you might have nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
But you're missing all that stuff, these micro things that are there, that are issues.
Yeah.
Because of this bigger narrative saying Trump is a racist and everyone who is there is a
Is
racist.
right? Is a white
Right?
supremacist. If you're
When
a Donald Trump supporter, then you're a racist. It's bigoted, deplorable, right? And that's where it's, the media, the left, that just they lose me there, right? It's like I can get and I can understand denouncing and attacking the sitting president of the United States because he refuses to condemn white supremacy on multiple occasions. I'm behind you. That's terrible. He shouldn't do it. He should purposefully condemn white supremacy. But when you say that everybody that voted for Donald Trump is a horrible person, like, come on.
Right. Or we'll take it. I mean, once again, it's this stuff to get clicks.
Yeah, it's
If
all
you're- if
clickbait.
you're
It's the
reasonable-
structure.
So let's take the idea of defund the police. That was something that got a lot of traction with a lot of people.
Oh yeah, it blew up over the summer. That was it. That was the big thing. We're gonna defund
Right.
the police.
And that got a lot of attention, a lot of clicks, made a lot of people a lot of money somewhere.
Yeah.
Ad revenue, something.
Yeah.
That's going to come and go. And instead of being reasonable and saying, you know what, most cops are okay, and they're good cops, and they act the same whether it's someone who's doing a crime who's white or someone who's doing a crime who's black. But there are cops who are not. There's not a lot of them. But what can we do to fix that?
Right.
Where are the smaller police groups where people are having issues? I have black friends, and they say, you know what? If I drive to this city outside of Columbia, or in this city outside of Columbia, I've been pulled over.
Yeah,
much
you're gonna
more.
get stopped. Oh yeah. Well,
Right?
I had a black friend that I used to work with that had to buy a new car because he got pulled over so much. He lived over in Lexington, and I think he drove like a Cadillac. And he was like, I kept getting pulled over. He was like, so I got a new car. He's like, I just was tired of it. And I was like, what? Like that? Are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, dude, that's just something I've had to live with. And it's funny because like you talk to your black friends, and they're like, yeah, that's like par for the course. That's what I would expect. And that blows my mind, right? But I mean, those are the conversations that need to be had, And
that's what affects most people.
right.
But that's not what is going to get attention, you
Right.
know. And what's sad is we're doing everybody a disservice by only looking at these small instances that are insane that they happened. George
Right.
Floyd, it's insane that happened.
Mind blowing.
But when we take that, most white people say, well, it doesn't happen in my city.
Right.
That's up there with y'all. We don't have any issues here, because we look at that one crazy thing that gets a lot of clicks. When the truth
Right.
is, no, there are issues in your city. They're a lot smaller and they're not fancy, or it's not gonna, you're not gonna make a big fuss about it. But there are issues.
Yeah.
It's it's sad. The state that America is in, I truly blame largely on the media and on politicians who get in office because of a popularity contest.
Yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard was on Joe Rogan recently. Have you listened to that?
Yeah, I listened to it. Dude, Tulsi is awesome. Like, I love Tulsi Gabbard. I'm a huge fan.
Me too.
Huge fan.
Me too.
Tulsi Gabbard, if you hear this, please come on my podcast.
Yeah, Joe Rogan had her on, which is where I heard her for the first time. And then she said, if I get to be president, I want to try to end lobbying. And I was like, that is amazing.
Right.
I've never heard anybody say that. And it's crazy that even exists.
Well, it's no wonder why she got blackballed from the Democratic ticket.
Absolutely. I mean, what's more elitist than saying only companies that make millions and billions of dollars can have access to that senator or that or
Right.
anyone who makes legislation.
Right. Well, and like a perfect example of this is all of Trump's tariffs, all the tariffs that he put on China. It was amazing how you had all these Republican senators that came out and supported those tariffs, and then behind closed doors were writing letters to the United States Trade Representative, which the office that regulates who basically gets exempt from it, and asking them not to let those tariffs apply to all of the people within their district, because they have those people, those large businesses in their district being like, listen, man, taking them out to a nice steak dinner. Like, hey, listen, Lindsey Graham, I need you to make sure that I don't have to pay these tariffs right now. And at the end of the day, that's outrageous. I mean, if you're looking for a reason why so many people are so distrusting of what, like, the entirety of the political and corporate structure in America, look no further than our campaign finance system and lobbying.
You know what's crazy? It's against the law for public schools to pay for athletes to come to their school.
Right.
That's against the law.
Right, against the law.
Because
illegal.
Because that would be unfair.
Of course it would. How could you pay those people?
Perfectly legal to fund entire campaigns, push as much money as you want into that campaign for a kickback. That's fine.
Yeah, that's okay.
High school football player, sorry, you can't get money because you're a good athlete, because that wouldn't be fair to the other schools. But
if you're going to legislate something for me, that'd be good for me. Here's a quick $500,000.
And that's just the irony that it can be found everywhere in America, and I'm sure probably most governments.
Right. I mean, anywhere.
That, like, okay, we obviously know that just because you have money and can pay for something doesn't give you the right to do that, because people who don't have money and who can't pay for that also can't do that.
Right. And they're
and we have it on a small level, like high school sports.
Mm-hmm.
But we get up to the branch of government that affects all of our lives, and no, perfectly legal.
Right. It's okay. Let it roll. Let it ride.
We don't mind, we're the head of this, cattle union for your whole life. Yeah, come be on the FDA. There's no problem.
That's okay.
There's no conflict of interest there.
Right. You're not trying to push some sort of very specific agenda or anything.
And that's why it's like people get so mad at people for believing conspiracies.
Yeah. Which there's some wacky ones out there.
Oh, of course. Yeah, there are some crazy ones. But people believe them because there is enough crappy stuff out there.
Right.
But it's like that. You know what? That's not too far.
Right. It's believable.
That's not as much of a stretch.
Right.
For me as you might think it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's sad. Yeah. At the end of the day, man is prideful. I recently was watching Lord of the Rings again.
Oh, dude, so good.
And
so good. Shout out to Tolkien, dude.
Oh yeah, great. And it's just crazy, because for those of you who, most people probably know the story, right? But there's the Ring of Power,
right? Was
destroying Middle Earth, and man killed. I forget his name. It doesn't matter. The guy who created the Ring of Power. He's the Eye.
Yeah, right. Sauron.
Yeah.
Sauron.
And man got it.
Yeah.
But man couldn't
handle the power.
Couldn't handle the power.
Right.
Right. And so it took these little hobbits who weren't affected as much by it. These humble hobbits. And I've been thinking about that through this whole thing of like, man can't handle the power.
Yeah.
They can't handle the millions of dollars that they make. They can't handle the popularity. That's why cancel culture exists.
Yeah.
Man can't handle the power. And if there's a problem in your life, I bet you could track it down to that. There's somebody getting ripped off at the same time because somebody else can make millions of dollars.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You can always you can always follow the money.
Yeah.
I grew up, my mom always said that. You can always follow the money. It'll take you right down to wherever the source of the problem is, almost always there.
So I think us as Americans, we have to realize that, and then we have to say, how do I not be a part of this?
Right.
And I think a big part off the bat is we have to stop this thought of, if you disagree with me, I'm going to cancel you.
Oh,
And most people, even if they're a part of cancel culture, would probably say it's not a good thing. But still, I've seen so much. If you voted for this person, just defriend me.
Yeah. Unfriend me. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Well, and that's one thing that I really am, not to shamelessly plug what I'm doing here, but to shamelessly plug it. One of my goals for this podcast, and especially these little guestisodes that I'm going to be doing, is to bring people on that have wildly different opinions, right? Have somebody from, some of my most far right-wing conservative friends, and then some of my farthest left-wing conservative friends, and just talk to them. And have one episode where somebody says something that is so far left that my right-wing listeners are like, I cannot believe, and then have somebody on the very next episode that says something that's like, my left-wing listeners are like, I cannot believe that. Because there can and there needs to be this level of like meeting in the middle, where you're able to look and be like, you know what, I don't have to tell you to unfriend me. Maybe I can just listen to what you have to say. That's okay. We can sit down and talk. There's things that you and I disagree with, right? We've been friends for years, and I can sit down and drink a glass of bourbon with you and sit down and talk for an hour and a half and have a great time,
Right.
And it doesn't have to be all of the, but I really do think a lot of that goes back to what you were talking about earlier with social media and this anonymity that comes with social media as well, this ability to be able to sit behind a screen and not be held accountable to being in front of somebody. I mean, there's plenty of things that if you said, people say online that if they said in person, somebody would beat the crap out of them, right. And they would never say it in person because of that. Right.
Right. And, there's something in all of us, or in a lot of us, that we want to fight for something good. And, I heard somebody say this, I think years ago, but that, at some point in every country, there's some sort of revolution because the people in power get too much power, and the little people have to take it back.
Yeah.
But, and if you look at statistics, like America's past due for one.
Way past due.
But it doesn't happen because everyone, they do that tweet, and it's like, right. I fought for it.
Right. Here's my contribution to this.
Right.
Hey, you stop that.
Right.
And they can sit behind their phone and eat their Cheez-Its.
Or it's just like, you believe that? Curse word, all the,
right.
Die,
Right.
And it's like, you feel better about yourself for saying that. You made zero
impact.
Yeah.
It's a false.
And that's what, like all this virtue signaling too. It's we're all fighting for something, and at the end of the day, it's like, what are you really fighting for? Is it going to make any real change, or does it just make you feel better, or make you seem better to your friends, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's almost like, if you find a new band, you feel proud. It's like, I found this band before they got big.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of the same with,
I literally did that this week. I texted, I found a band on like Reddit or something that was new. I texted like 3 or 4 friends, and I was like, you heard it here first.
Well, it's the same thing though in finding something you disagree with. So it's like, I found out that this person or this company believes this. I'm going to blast them. Oh, look, it caught on, and I was the first person to...
Right. I'm so cool.
I was the first person.
I hated that way before it was cool.
Right. And it's this crazy thing, man, and it's creating so much division. And people who have big platforms, whoever you are, if you're in the media, if you're in Hollywood, or if you're, some big CEO of some company, these people are driving it.
Yeah.
Because what they love or what they hate gets them likes. I think maybe it was on Joe Rogan and Tulsi, but that they were talking about how much money Trump made. Everybody,
dude,
because
he's gonna be making so much more money after this. He's gonna make more money than he's ever made in his entire life in the next year or two.
Right? Isn't that crazy?
Gonna kill it.
Right. And same, for all the media outlets who hated him, they did so much to drive up
Free marketing.
Oh yeah.
Free.
Oh yeah. And they created the, people who maybe would marginally like Trump. They love him now.
Right.
Because they've seen, what you've done, and they really hate you.
Yeah, right.
Some of their love for Trump because they hate you so much.
Right. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. It's nuts, man.
It is. We're living in a crazy time, to say the least. But, it's all right because we got good friends.
Right.
We're able to sit down and have good conversations. And hopefully, at the end of the day, things will start to improve. I really do think and hope for that kind of like middle ground because I think that people are starting to push towards that. But
yeah, we have to fight for it. It's not going to be given to us.
Yeah. No.
We have to make decisions. I'm not going to, hating this person this much would, my 12 friends would make me look very virtuous. But I'm gonna choose not to do that for the sake of not killing this friendship. I don't have to kill, or not, being this divisive.
Right.
We have to actively do things to go against the tide, to care for other Americans who disagree with us.
Yeah, and it has to be done on that individual level.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be done one by one.
Right.
But, well, I think that's a good place to end it. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I agree.
Did you have fun?
Lots of fun.
Good, dude. I did too. I'm so glad. All right, where can people find you on social media? What are your handles?
Right. If you want to follow the best band in South Carolina,
easily number one.
Station 7 Band, all spelled out. We don't abbreviate with numbers.
Can't do that.
If you want to follow my farming and homestead journey, you can find me at Derby Lane Farm on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. I enjoyed it a ton.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Oh, dude, I'm enjoying it.
We need it.
Well, I'm hoping that it continues to grow, that we can continue doing this for many years to come. Absolutely. All right. Over and out.